source code out there. If your program does something really, really good, right? And say you and I are competing. We're both writing windowing systems. Like you might be writing KDE and I might be writing GNOME. And they go back and forth, and each one is better for a while. But they also have all the source code to everything, right? So if the KDE people come out with something really great, the GNOME people are like, man, how did they pull that off, right? Well, how do they pull it off? You look in the source code and you find out how they pulled it off. And yes, it's complicated. It's a great, big, huge project. But so is ours, and we got people who are used to thinking like that in deep, hard project kinds of terms. And so you figure it out. So the best parts of capitalism, I think, are sort of caught up in the competition that happens between, like comparable free software projects. If this was good, we're going to do it. We'll either look at your code, see how you did it, or we'll figure out our own way to do it, or whatever, and it ratchets it up. So, it's not to say that always free software is better than always commercial software, or that because commercial software, has this paid vendor chain and so on, the commercial software is always better. In my experience, all software sort of sucks. Has bugs that it didn't think it had, didn't work the way I wanted it to work, or whatever. I feel like since that's going to be true, anyway, since all software breaks and doesn't work, and I feel like at least it ought to be free. It ought to just, which is to say, it ought to come with these freedoms. Like, it ought to be able to at least try and look through the source and figure out like why this program. It shouldn't be a black box. It should at least have a chance, because all gets broken anyway. All doesn't work anyway. In some context, I feel like I ought to at least have a chance at it. Or some other technical person, and we ought to be able to talk about it. So that the next person who has that trouble and types that same error message into Google, they find our conversation on the internet, and two technical people who took the software apart figured out, like why it didn't work, and maybe figured out a workaround, and maybe didn't. But at least there's a chance at that. I like that. But I also feel a responsibility when I find a piece of free software doesn't work, and I do figure out why it doesn't work. I really feel like I didn't pay for this software, right? Somebody wrote it. They gave it away under a great license with a lot of freedoms for me. I do feel like I have a responsibility to, turn around and try and help. Maybe I can't figure out what's wrong, but to at least be a good bug reporter. Like I found a bug in JFS, the file system, which is really technical, like how the files get stored onto the computer's hard drive. Most people, certainly librarians, probably don't care about that. They just care that the files get there and that they come back and that they're the same, right? And I had this one computer that just didn't work right. It would go for like 2 weeks, and then you just like freak out. I don't know, just freak out. Man, I couldn't figure it out. Well, I finally figured it must be a problem at the file system there. This deep inside the computer technical layer, and I had no hope of understanding this. Probably, I figured, it's technical kernel code, really hard stuff. But I thought, well, here's what I can do. I can make a really careful bug report. I can say, this is my system, this is my configuration, this is the software I'm running, and this seems to be what triggers it. And if you figure out what you think it is, I can test it and let you know if the problem goes away. And it took like 4 months. I went back and forth with one IBM guy who was working on JFS. And he would say, well, I think this might fix it. And I would rebuild the software, and I would test it, and I would do the things that I thought might trigger it. And then we'd wait a week or so, and then sure enough, I'd be able to say, here's what it did, and here's all the message logs that spit out when it did it. And he'd be like, all right, thanks. And we collected those, and I didn't do anything but just good bug reporting and so on. And eventually, after about 4 months, I got an email, through this, and he says, I found a race condition today, which some of you guys will understand. He says, I found a race condition today, and I think this is the one that's going to, I think this is your issue. I think this is it. He's been watching for it, because of course we've had this collaboration going. I says, okay, and it was like 2 lines of code just in the wrong order. It was really, really small change. He sent me this little tiny patch, and I rebuilt the program, and I ran it. I emailed him about 4 weeks later, and I says, look, it's never run more than 12 days in the past. It's been 4 weeks. I think you can call this one fixed. And so, I didn't have technical knowledge But I did have that sort of spirit of, I got my software with all these freedoms, and I should be a good bug reporter. I think that's kind of the way you should think about it. You know, I've tried that with other companies. I found a bug once in Maxima. No, not Maxima, that's free. I found a bug once in Maple. Actually, twice. I found bugs in Maple twice, which is like a competitor to Mathematica. And the first time I found a bug in Maple, not only did I find the bug, despite the fact that it was not free software, I found a workaround for it because it was similar to a bug that happened in a piece of free software, and I knew the workaround for that. And I sent it to them, and they're like, oh, that's wonderful. It's really nice that you sent us this. We're going to put this up on the website. And so when people search for this error, that they will find not just like nothing, they'll find like how to work around it. Never happened. I waited 6 months. I emailed him back. I said, you said you're going to put this on your website. He said, oh yeah, you know, I got an email from like a manager that time. Oh yeah, definitely going to get on now. Never happened. Never ever happened. And, when I was working on my research, I found it did the math wrong once. And I emailed him. I said, here is a situation where it does the math wrong. It doesn't just say, I'm not sure, or there was a loss of precision, or whatever. It says 9. It should have said 8. And I never heard anything back. I thought, at some point I ought to get a free copy for turning these bugs. And I found bugs in a couple of other commercial pieces of software. You want to be collaborative. I've never had that well, I have had that experience with a free software project. But at least with a free software project, I feel like, if they're not that responsive, I at least got the freedom to try and fix it myself. Maybe they're not capable, but at least I get to try. Maple, I don't get to try. If I find a bug, I can't think of what else. I found bugs in a couple of other pieces of software, but Maple's the one I think of right now.
Yeah, just
It's sad.
well, you mean,
But that's kind of how I feel. If your software's free, that's the.
he asked me a Unix question, I couldn't answer it, and I told him there was a meeting happening.
This is the right place.
Yeah.
We're sort of done. So, what's your Unix question?
It's
You can't
not
get it to work.
actually a question, but some problem with this, so I'm running a
That's
Mac.
not really Unix. That's a Mac.
I know it's Mac, but it's kind of
It's
based on
Unix underneath.
Unix.
Yeah.
Okay, we
I
can
think we're
figure it out.
So
So I have a question. If I'm running the disk, the terminal, can I just do the command thing and then copy some files from the internal hard disk to an external one? Can I do that
You
using
know
like
where to copy them to. That's possible. Absolutely. It's pretty easy.
could anyone?
Yeah, I think so. It's even on a Mac. You can type mount to see what the mount points are, right?
Yeah, we can do that after we finish this.
Yeah. How about 5 minutes? We'll do it in 5 minutes.
5
Sit down. And, anything else we should say about free software that I left out? I kind of hit the highlights that I always think are important. I can recommend some books. Richard Stallman's got like all his collected writings basically on the internet, so you can read all of his stuff. But he also has a book called Free Software, Free Society, and they're all collected on paper, and I think that's terrific. And then another book that's really, really good, I think, is Lawrence Lessig's book. Lawrence Lessig's an attorney. He argued against copyright extensions in front of the Supreme Court and kind of botched and lost. And so part of the reason we have these huge, long copyrights that sort of are bad is that case didn't go well. He wrote a book called Free Culture, which you can also get on the internet. It's really good. Go ahead.
I guess one of my questions is, if you extend free software and then someone breaks that license, who in the list of extension would be?
Every author has a right as an author. The original author and the authors of the derivative works. So anytime you extend software, it becomes a derivative work. It's derived from your creative work and my creative work. And so we both essentially have a claim.
So would it be an equal claim, or would it be like?
Well, that's the kind of thing courts have to decide. But in a sense, I mean, either of us can say you can't distribute it. You just can't. And so if they don't want to work with both of us, of course, they can try to find a copy before you extended it, which they might be able to do, and they could just work with me. In practice, that too many authors thing is a technical problem.